In April of 1981, tucked away in the remote mountains of Northern California, a family settled in for the night in a quiet vacation cabin. They felt safe. They felt secure. But by the next morning, 3 of them would be brutally murdered. One child would be missing, and the investigation that followed would become one of the most baffling and mishandled cases in American criminal history. This is the disturbing story of the Keddie cabin murders. The year is 1981. Keddie, California, is a small, secluded resort community nestled deep within the Sierra Nevada mountains. It's a place of rustic cabins and dense forests, with very few year-round residents. This was the kind of town where people felt comfortable leaving their doors unlocked, where the quiet of the wilderness was the loudest sound you'd hear. In Cabin 28 lived the Sharp family. The mother, 36-year-old Glenna, known to everyone as Sue, was a single mom trying to build a new life for her 5 children after leaving an abusive relationship. Living with her were her 15-year-old son, John, and 2 of her younger sons, 10-year-old Rick and 5-year-old Greg. That night, John's 17-year-old friend, Dana Wingate, was also staying over. The family's oldest daughter, Sheila, was at a sleepover in a neighboring cabin, and their youngest daughter, 12-year-old Tina, was also believed to be home. On the evening of April 11th, the lights in Cabin 28 went out. The mountain air grew cold, and a deep silence fell over Keddie. No one reported hearing screams. No one saw anything unusual. No one called for help. The night passed as peacefully as any other. The next morning, April 12th, around 7:45 a.m., 14-year-old Sheila Sharp left her friend's cabin and walked home. She opened the front door to Cabin 28 and stepped into an unimaginable nightmare. The living room was a scene of pure horror. Her mother Sue, her brother John, and his friend Dana lay on the floor. They had been bound with electrical wire and medical tape, then brutally beaten and stabbed. The violence was extreme, almost ritualistic. The walls were splattered with blood. It was a massacre. In the midst of this carnage, Sheila made a chilling discovery. In an adjoining bedroom, her 2 younger brothers, Rick and Greg, along with a neighborhood friend who had also slept over, were found alive and physically unharmed. They had somehow slept through the entire horrific attack, just a few feet away from where their family was being murdered. But someone was missing. 12-year-old Tina Sharp was nowhere to be found. Had she been abducted by the killers? Or had she run away in terror? No one knew. The Plumas County Sheriff's Department arrived on the scene, but from the very beginning, the investigation was plagued by critical errors. The crime scene, the single most important source of evidence, was not properly secured. Neighbors, friends, and even onlookers were allowed to wander in and out of Cabin 28, contaminating potential evidence and destroying crucial clues. The first deputy on the scene later admitted he was so overwhelmed by the brutality that he immediately went outside to be sick. The sheer disorganization was staggering. Evidence was mishandled, misplaced, or simply overlooked. One of the murder weapons, a steak knife found at the scene, was bent completely in half from the force of the attack. Another weapon, a hammer, was also recovered. But the initial forensic work was so poor that much of the information that could have been gathered was lost forever. Even more troubling was the initial tunnel vision of the investigators. It quickly labeled the crime a domestic dispute or a drug deal gone wrong, dismissing the possibility of random killers or something far more sinister. This narrow focus caused them to ignore promising leads and fail to properly interview key witnesses. Almost immediately, suspicion fell on two local men, Martin Smart, a neighbor who lived in a nearby cabin, and his friend, John B.O. Boobied. Smart had a history of violence, and Boobied was a known ex-convict from Chicago, with alleged ties to organized crime. Martin Smart's own wife, Marilyn, told police that Marty and Bo had been at a local bar that night, and had left around 11 p.m. She said they returned to their cabin much later, and she remembered seeing them burning something in the wood stove. The day after the murders were discovered, Martin Smart conveniently found a bloody hammer, which he claimed was his, and turned it over to the police. This was the same type of hammer believed to have been used in the attacks. Perhaps most damning of all, Martin Smart later confessed to his therapist that he had been responsible for Sue Sharp's murder, though he denied killing the others. He claimed Sue was trying to convince his wife to leave him, and he had gone to cabin 28 to silence her. Despite this apparent confession, and a mountain of circumstantial evidence pointing towards Smart and Boobied, police never made an arrest. They claimed they didn't have enough solid evidence to secure a conviction. Boobied died in 1988, and Smart died in 2000, both taking whatever secrets they had to their graves. While the investigation stalled, the question of what happened to Tina Sharp loomed over the case. For 3 agonizing years, her family held on to the slim hope that she might still be alive. That hope was shattered in April of 1984. A bottle collector, scavenging in the woods about 30 miles from Keddie, stumbled upon a human skull and part of a jawbone. Dental records confirmed the community's worst fears. The remains belonged to Tina Sharp. An anonymous phone call was made to the sheriff's office shortly after the discovery, claiming the remains were Tina's. The caller hung up before they could be identified, but the message was clear. The location of her remains, so far from the cabin, suggested she had been taken from the scene, alive, and murdered elsewhere. Her cause of death was ruled as undetermined due to the condition of the remains, but it was officially a homicide. Yet again, no suspects were named. The case grew colder and colder. Decades passed. The story of the Keddie cabin murders faded into a dark piece of local folklore. Cabin 28, a constant and grim reminder of the tragedy, was demolished in 2004. It seemed like justice would never be served. But in 2013, the case was officially reopened. A new sheriff and a new team of investigators decided to re-examine the evidence using modern forensic technology. They discovered a crucial piece of evidence that had been overlooked for more than 30 years. A recording of that anonymous phone call from 1984, the one that led police to Tina's remains. They also retested the medical tape used to bind the victims. New DNA analysis revealed a profile of an unknown male. This genetic material did not match Martin Smart, Bo Boobied, or anyone else in the National DNA Database. This discovery breathed new life into the case, but it also raised more questions. Was there another killer involved? Or was the DNA from someone who was present, but didn't participate in the murders? Despite these new leads, the case remains frustratingly unsolved. The Keddie cabin murders are not just a story of horrific violence. They are a story of profound institutional failure. A story of missed chances, mishandled evidence, and a wall of silence that has stood for over 40 years. We are left with haunting questions. Why were the younger children in the next room left unharmed? Did they see or hear something that their minds have blocked out? And how could an investigation into a quadruple homicide fail so completely, so catastrophically? For the surviving members of the Sharp family, and for the small community of Keddie, the wounds have never truly healed. Justice has never arrived. More than 4 decades later, the The case remains open, a cold file filled with unanswered questions. The voices of Sue, John, Dana, and Tina still wait, somewhere in the silence of the Sierra Nevada mountains, for their story to finally be heard. Thank you for watching. If you found this story compelling, please consider subscribing for more deep dives into history's most fascinating and mysterious cases.